Hi there, welcome to the NPC Sports Podcast. My name is Ben, and I am happy to be joined once again this week by Logan, and Mike is back for another run around the track with us. How are you guys doing this morning?
Great.
Excellent.
Fantastic. I've basically, Wally pipped Dakota at this point as he's jet setting around the world. So it's good to be back.
Is it Wally pipping if he's basically leaving on his own accord just to go wherever the hell he
That's a
wants?
fair point. Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of unfair
I
though,
guess it
but
would sooner be scabbing maybe if he's striking, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's one way of looking at it. I don't think I don't think he's a big union guy. Well, actually, he probably would be a big union guy once he realizes what's entailed to be a union guy. So it's one thing where he would say, I don't like unions, and then it's like, well, you have a chance to join this union. He's like, hell yeah, I'll do that.
yeah,
Which is his,
there'd be a lot of cognitive dissonance for
yeah,
him around unions.
100%.
uh, yeah, Mike, I don't know if this is unfair to you to ask you talk about the major sports when I'm gonna guess this weekend most of your attention was dedicated to the golf side. I guess just give you the anything you want to say about the Masters, about Mr. McElroy.
No, I mean, I'm not a big Rory guy, but like, it was captivating drama. I was talking to somebody about it. I think it's the best Masters of my lifetime from start to finish. I think for just, the Tiger thing in 2019 was my favorite probably. But just for like the gripping drama, especially considering at, he after 11, it looks like that's when Bryson dumped it in the water. It looked like Bryson was gone. Justin Rose was still kind of hadn't made his charge yet. It's like, oh, this thing, he's gonna, sleepwalk to this, and then to put it in the creek at 13 was the highest of drama, and just like it was very Rory. Like that's just the way he plays. That's the way he is. I think people like him because he's uniquely human, especially for a professional athlete, especially for a professional golfer. I think he's that part of him kind of annoys me sometimes, but like the one thing from like a media standpoint too is like, and he even mentioned it in his post game press conference, is like, what are we going to talk about now? And like that is the crazy thing is like golf now has nothing that is that captivating anymore. Like Tiger's gone, Rory's got that. Like there's I don't know what else do you talk about. That's what's except for like the game coming back together. So I thought it was probably gonna go down as the best sporting event of the year in my opinion. I think I'll stand on that hill right now, even in April. Um, and I always think it's cool when like the greater sports world tunes into golf and it's like, oh, this thing lived up to expectations. So fun weekend, that's for sure.
Super interesting too, because he kind of weighed in on the Morikawa stuff we talked about last week when he was asked about it. And I don't know if you happened to catch his remarks, but the portion I caught as he said, this golf is a different sport where they're not required, they're not obligated to
Mhm.
speak to the media the way that athletes in other sports are. And the way I took it to mean, I don't know how you kind of took his point. The way that I kind of took it for him to mean it was, you know, we are not obligated to talk, so therefore, like, we should try to talk without being obligated. Otherwise, someone is going to obligate it, like
Yeah.
require it for us. So which I thought was a kind of an interesting response to that
Which is like
mini
it was
controversy, whatever you want to call.
no, and it was uniquely Rory too. Like
Yeah,
this is like one of the things that can frustrate you about this guy is that there are times where he'll say, this is important and like we should get out in front of this, kind of to what you're saying, and then there's he puts one in the drink at 15 on Thursday and doesn't talk. And it's just like or go back to last year at Pinehurst. He almost ran somebody over leaving the parking lot because he wanted to get out of there so fast without doing media. So like it's classic Rory, not even in a bad way, just the matter of fact, like speaking out of both sides of his mouth. And like I think he's even more uniquely positioned to have, you know, an input on the direction that this thing is headed, whatever that means now that he's won this. Like he's already the most powerful person in golf, not named Tiger Woods, but like this, now he's got this under his belt. He's like, our generation's Arnold Palmer. It's kind of hard to fathom and contemplate. But like that's where he's at. So I think whatever he says about this thing carries a lot of weight.
Anything to add, Logan? Any golf takes?
Well, usually the Masters, I am certainly not as devout of a golf follower as Mike is, but I do like to think that I keep up a little bit. I had no juice for the Masters this year. I don't know what it was. I just didn't really watch. I watched.
Yeah, obviously you didn't. If that,
Yeah, I mean, I watched some of the first round, and I was sitting there on Saturday, and it was going on, and I was like, for some reason, I'm more drawn to Red Sox, White Sox, which is like that never happens. I've literally been thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know why I couldn't bring myself to watch the Masters this year, but I just couldn't. So I feel great now hearing you, somebody whose golf opinion I trust, say that was probably the greatest one of your lifetime. But
even on Saturday, like that's just a wild. You just don't like golf. That's fine. Like like that's not a
Yeah.
big deal. But like Rory was like 500.
No, I do like golf.
Generational.
I do
start
like.
around.
Yeah,
There was
I know.
pump on Saturday too. Like that's the thing,
Considering
right?
it an aberration.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll defend
which is
defend
fine.
Logan
Golf
here.
isn't for everybody. Like it's,
Yeah, exactly. Because like Logan, honestly, that's
I
the
do
way
like
I
it
am.
though. That's
it doesn't sound
will
like
watch
it. That's okay.
But Logan, that's the way I was with the.
So I
National
don't watch
Championship.
one. I'm sorry, Ben. I don't watch one
No,
tournament. and
One
so I
tur-
can't
hold on,
possibly
hold
like
on.
golf.
It's not that
One
you didn't
tournament.
watch it.
We're
it's
not
that you're
talking
like, I
the
wasn't
Valspar.
captivated by it. Like it could not have been. Like that's the thing. You're like, it's
But I'm counting the ambivalence. What the point I was trying to make that of course has now been misrepresented is I am saying that for some reason I'm always drawn to the Masters, but I was just like, nah, not
it's
this
like
year.
saying like I
And
like
it's like,
ice cream, but like you could take that hot fudge sundae away. No, thank you. Like
Oh, so do you like ice cream, but sometimes like, oh, maybe I had ice cream yesterday, or maybe I'm just not in an ice cream space.
I just don't think you like ice cream.
There's way too much oversimplifying of one point.
Well, yeah, you saying I didn't watch one tournament. It's the Masters. It's not like it's not like the Virginia Slims Invitational. It's like I really love football, but I missed one game. Yeah, it happened to be the Super Bowl.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that people who are tired of watching the Chiefs, for example, are just like, I fucking watched the Super. I'm not sorry, pardon the language, but I just didn't watch the Super Bowl this year. Like those people can't possibly be football fans.
The viewership numbers tend to say no. Yeah,
but also like my point is if like in the third quarter, Patrick Mahomes was going blow for blow with Tom Brady, for example, or something like that, like then yeah, I'd probably turn it on. Like that's my point, is that this was, if you're casual at all, this is red meat for casual golf fans. Like this was, it doesn't get any more like I'm gonna turn this on than this. Like this, a famous golfer going up against another famous golfer with like legitimate historical context, and this is a guy who's made a career in the last 10 years out of choking. Like and he was choking again.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's
I
okay,
can't get as
Logan.
upset.
Like in your
right,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, Logan, like
No,
it's okay to not care. Like the NCAA, like college basketball, like the Final Four, like I didn't care.
Yeah, right. Me
So
too.
like I watched, what was it? Was that like the Red Sox were playing St. Louis that weekend or something like that? I
that was the
watched
opening,
baseball instead of that because I didn't care. So I'm
too.
saying like it's okay to not care, but you can't be like, listen, I really like golf, but I didn't watch one of the 4 tournaments of the year that actually count for something.
No, I mean, I will probably watch the U.S. Open. Like, I will watch the remaining majors. That is historically what I do. The point I'm making that you guys are choosing to miss is that for some reason, it is a me problem. Does that need to be any more clearly delineated that this year it had nothing to do with the tournament? It was just like, for some reason, the pull that I feel for the Masters every year didn't have it this year. I'm sure it'll be back next year, but this year wasn't there.
Well, you missed out.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Jesus Christ.
I think this is going to be a good episode today. I can already sense it because we're ganging up on Logan about his golf takes. I know that you guys are primed to gang up on me on my Trevor Story takes. So let's get right into it right now. Talk about the Red Sox bats. Your king, Trevor Story, basically the only guy who is hitting at the moment. Even coming off the games that they have won, they were shaky at best, where they had to survive in some cases based on what runs they did get. At the moment, let's see. They are, as a team, hitting 251, on base percentage at 323, OPS plus of 102, which is basically an average lineup, which lines up with their 8-9 record or 9-9. So far this season, they are looking very similar to what they were last year. Win some, lose some. Their offense, has its games here or there where they're blasting off, but they're still doing a lot of dumb things. On the base paths, on defense. Their pitching does not look totally cooked. Sorry, when I say cooked, I know that can be taken both ways. I guess I was saying in the recipe sense, like it seems underdone. Trevor Story, to his credit, he's hitting 311. That's nice. Nothing else about his offensive production is nice. So I will continue with that. 329 on base percentage, still not what I need. 459 slugging, still not what I need. But he's the only guy who's really producing at the moment. So I guess we'll carry that for all it's worth. It's still early, but what are you guys looking at with the Red Sox, starting with the lineup thus far?
Well, you have to think the lineup will hit eventually. Like Durant homered last night. He's one of their lowest OPS guys. Like, I guess, this might be a revisionist take, but a month ago, if we said the Red Sox best offensive player at this point in the year is Trevor Story, what kind of reaction would you have? Like, I probably wouldn't be inclined to think it was a crisis. I'd think it was just Trevor Story having a very uncharacteristically strong, even for someone who likes him, 2 weeks. But that's not how it's gone. I mean, it's kind of a consistency thing. Like every game, there's someone who's popping off. Last night it was Bregman. Like everybody's kind of had their moments. Abreu's had a million of them. But the whole conversation around the lineup going into the season was like, all right, it's finally like 1 through 9. You feel pretty good. There aren't a whole lot of weak spots, and there's zero consistency. So it's like if you get one guy in Trevor Story who's off and running, he's going to get stranded every single time because 4 guys hitting after him can't make contact at a given point. So I think some of it's just like we're 2 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season. It's a small sample size. They're in a bad run. You could take this type of 3-week, 500 baseball run and drop at any point in the season and be kind of concerning. But since there's nothing else to grade it against, that's all we have. So concerning, but still far too early to make any widespread declarations about them.
Interesting move. The goalposts, Trevor Story's goalposts are now in a different room, moved down the street in a different house. We're just going to keep moving those around because the numbers aren't good enough for Ben's liking, but that's fine. I think Logan hit on an interesting point that, like, I think part of the reason you build a lineup that's this deep is that if it is, you've got more chances that one guy goes off, and like that's actually a good thing theoretically, which I think we kind of saw last night, Tuesday night, whatever night it was, with Bregman, who's by the way been like more or less as advertised, at least offensively. Defensively,
Bregman's been their best offensive player, to be clear.
Which is
it's not
like
a Trevor Story.
But like Bregman being like borderline bad defensively speaks to like the mystery around this team and just the inconsistent start to the season, where it's again. And you would like to think that a team this talented that has shown glimpses of it from time to time would eventually, like over the course of 162 games, sync it all up. But like when when the offense is going well, the pitching stinks, and when the defense has a clean game, the offense isn't good. That's why Tuesday night was such a interesting, not test or case study, but just an interesting one sample out of 162 where it's like, oh, this is what they look like when they do all three things right. And that just hasn't happened nearly enough this season. And like, that was the thing. And sometimes they don't happen at all, like on Monday night. And that was Cora's big thing, right? It's like, we sucked across the board tonight. And we saw the same thing Friday night in Chicago where they're getting their brains beat in by the White Sox. So like, it just hasn't all clicked. And like, that's a probably way too simplistic way of looking at it, or maybe letting them off the hook. I don't know how you want to describe it, because like it is early, but it's also the middle of April. Like they're 20 games into it, whatever it is. It's like they're better than this, and they should be showing it at this point at a more consistent basis. That's the other thing too. Is like win two, lose two, win two, win one, lose one. Like it's lose three, win one. It's just there's just no rhythm. There's no consistency.
I think though so much of it is why should they be better than this? Like it's funny because like I agree with you.
That's a
You
yeah.
know, like why should they be better than this?
That's a
Like
fair point.
to tie it back, I don't dislike Trevor's story. I never have. I like him like I liked him in Colorado. Everything I've ever offered on Trevor's story is he hasn't stayed healthy for the Red Sox. And when he is healthy, he is not hit. Similarly, Tristan Casas, another guy that for some reason people think I dislike. My thing with Tristan Casas is I'm not confident he can stay healthy because he hasn't stayed healthy, and he also has not produced over a full season. These are facts. Like these are not takes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my thing is when I look at it is like until Jarren Duran had last season, I was not sold on him as, you know, a foundational piece. Then he had last season. And now that like he's had it, I feel confident believing that he can be a productive left fielder for them for the remainder of his contract. Alex Bregman, like I've seen him do it for multiple years. I believe that he can do it. Story, Casas, Rafaela, I have not seen them do it here outside of Colorado for an extended period of time to say, yeah, they can do that. But at the same time, for some reason, I do have this feeling like they should be better than what they are.
If I was going to push back a little bit, I understand it. And again, I don't want every show that I'm on to be a Trevor Story debate, but like, I would say that like the Colorado thing is maybe overstated a little bit. And I do think that's the difference between Trevor Story and, in this example, Tristan Casas, where like, even if you want to ding him for doing it at Coors, like Trevor Story has a much better track record and career resume than Tristan Casas does. Like if you want to have the Casas conversation, I think that's totally fair. And I think like honestly, if you want to go back, I saw somebody making this point the other day to like spring training when he's sitting on the bench down in Fort Myers and they ask him if, you know, Mayor Campbell and Anthony should be on opening day roster, and he's like, no, like we've got some dudes up here, and like including himself in that apparently. And it's like, well, go be a dude and do it for more than 2 games at a time. And I think that's the fair, like that. If yes, you want to start talking about those sorts of guys, I think that's far more applicable to this situation than it is for like Trevor Story. Because I also think people like Trevor Story too. So like I do think there's some intangible. Did you watch? By the way, have you watched the Netflix doc at all?
I have watched the first couple episodes. Yeah.
The second episode with like the Trevor Story thing, I thought was pretty telling. And like,
but did you see? Had you seen that before?
What?
Did
No, I mean like the way that
I just don't understand
why
why Red Sox fans have an affinity for him. Like beyond,
I don't totally
rather than any other.
But like
player.
it's not what I think. It's my point was about that episode was it's about his teammates and his coaches and the people around him who know him. And so like there is intangible value that he brings that I think is they believe it, right? They believe it exists. And I question if that's there with the other guys that we're kind of referring to here. So I don't know.
I don't know. What was Cora's first quote in that? Remember Cora said, I was actually kind of surprised he dove for that ball. So
I mean, okay, but like
the situation there was, you know, one where you don't really need to dive. So
I mean, like
I'm not saying he shouldn't have dove, but I'm just saying like
diving at a ball. Like,
no,
so
I'm not. But I'm saying that like you're saying, well, his manager and all that. No, his manager. The literal quote in that segment was,
I understand.
My
like,
first reaction was,
I'm
surprised he dove.
Sure,
yeah,
fine. I've done a lot of dumb things that people would regret in hindsight too, but they might still think I'm a good guy. And like, so maybe he made one bad defensive mistake or made a dumb play in one game in Anaheim in April or May or whatever it was. But like, I think they saw, especially with him defensively and whatever the intangible stuff is, once he went down, they sucked.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
so I think that's legit.
You could never, I mean, he's also in an impossible spot too, because for the faction of the fan base that doesn't have an affinity for him, they think that he's just collecting checks and useless. So if this, like, he hurt himself going above and beyond in April, like, I get that you should be tapping the brakes a little bit more, but isn't this the type of player that, like, everyone has been clamoring that they've lacked? Like, that's what boggles my mind about it, is like, I don't know how much this matters to anyone. I think it varies for each person, but like, I have never questioned Trevor Story's commitment, like, certainly compared to other players. Like, that is a guy who seems genuinely upset about the fact that it took him forever to even get going in a Red Sox uniform. And he also had kind of an unlucky injury on top of that with the dive. Like, again, we can debate the merits of whether he should have even dove for it at
No, we don't need
9
to do
o'clock
that.
at night in
All I'm saying is
Anaheim in
I'm
April,
noting that
but
Alex Cora said that in the
yeah,
thing. Okay, go.
which is a fair criticism. Like, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have done that, but at the same time, it's like, I really can't have a dissenting view on that when it's like, well, he got hurt caring about baseball. Like,
Yeah. I also think Core said a lot of other stuff in that episode about Trevor Story and the value that Trevor Story has. So, but like again, if you want to beat on other guys, like that's yeah, like the Cassis thing, I think can't be overstated. Is like for this whole thing to work, like for the utopian version of the next great Red Sox team to exist, he has to hit 30 home runs and drive in 100 runs. Like Roman Anthony isn't as good if Tristan Cassis isn't doing his thing. You know what I mean? Like this full-fledged thing, whenever we get there, which is taking longer than a lot of people probably expected or want, has to have him being awesome. And
yeah.
if it's never going to get to that full thing if he isn't, or unless you turn him in like a pitching through a trade. Like so until you get there, you are not fully cooked, to use your original thing.
Yeah,
I mean, they're at a massive. I'll just be quick. They're at a massive inflection point with Casas because he clearly wants to get extended too. But it's like, what has he shown you? They could trade pennies on the dollar for Michael Toglia in Colorado, who will hit you 25 home runs and he'll strike out just as much. It's like, I've always had this position with first baseman. You can find a guy who hits 25 homers and strikes out a bunch and pay very little for him. Like we're hitched to the idea of the illusion of what Casas could be,
and plays better defense than Casas has shown in the last 2 weeks too.
Yeah,
he's a minus on both ends, defensively and offensively. And I think you're absolutely right about the spring training remark about like we got grown men up here, because until that point, a lot of the things that he had said that he had gotten knocked for being like, let's say, self-centered. I thought there was an inkling of, and I still do too, I think there is an inkling of, he's just trying to be accountable. Like when he said like, my expectations for myself are super high, and I was like, yeah, that's good. It sounds a little self-centered, but like, it's good that you have high expectations for yourself. But then once he kind of put it in the context of, we have grown men, they belong up here, the Christian Campbell and these guys don't, that's when I was like, wait, I think your mindset might actually not be in like what's the best team, but in what's best for me.
The irony too is like we're 3 or 4 years removed from him taking shit from any guy who's got 5 years of service time for like being a weirdo. And like you know what I mean? Like that whole thing about like this guy does his yoga in the outfield. What has he ever done in the big leagues? And now he's the guy being like, we got guys who can do stuff in the big leagues. Well, meanwhile, Christian Campbell is like their third best hitter for the entire season. Like last night was the first night he hasn't reached base the entire season. Like that just hasn't aged well.
Yeah, he's becoming Keith Hernandez, who like when Keith Hernandez played, he was a kooky guy, read books and did stuff, and now he's like the greatest gatekeeper, of all time. If
he's just you can't be games. Yeah.
Can I raise one point about Bregman's defense sucking?
Yes.
Kind of a funny layer with Devers. Like, you'd think if they let him keep his glove ready, they probably could trot him out there, right? Like you could, like the comparison that's coming to mind is like, and this is certainly not apples to apples, but like the optics were really bad when Jeremy Swayman held out for a long time and then ended up, and Bregman's living up with the bat, but when Swayman comes out and is immediately just giving up beach balls after he gets the big deal, like after everything that was made about third base, you would like to think that Bregman wouldn't be like something of a liability over there, which, I am not actually going to just extrapolate a 2-week sample size and say that this otherwise very good defensive player is not holding up his end of the bargain. But that is a very funny layer that the third base defense, it was like, it's Bregman's job, like whatever. And it's like, well, he's displaying the concerns we saw about Devers.
But there is, I do think it's interesting how kind of like a single cog, or in the Red Sox case, 2 cogs in the infield can kind of mess everything up, because there was one game where Hamilton played second base and they turned a couple double plays that I was like, this is a real infield. And Campbell, I mean, I'm sure he's working over there, but he does not look ready yet. So I still feel really good about the left side of that infield, not really so much about the right side of the infield defensively, but it is like they are working with one guy at the pivot who is like learning the position, and the guy whose main job is to catch the balls over there. Sorry, I lost my video there. Whose main job is to catch the balls over there, and not really confident in they're doing their jobs.
I was just gonna say, this probably isn't fair to Rafael Devers, but I still, despite what my eyes have told me through a month of the season, like I still feel more confident.
Oh, absolutely.
Like with a ground ball being hit to Alex Bregman than I would be if Rafael Devers is over there. So like, yeah. That's probably
because if it was Mike Napoli or somebody over there, like I believe that they would, or Mitch Moreland, I believe that some of those errors wouldn't have happened. Whereas with Devers, a lot of times there's no shot for the first baseman.
The ball goes straight into the dugout.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That riding like 30 feet up the first base line.
That's not actually a contention that they should put Rafael Devers at third or try it out. But it is very funny that was like the number one storyline. Bregman's got errors.
So Bregman's basically been like Devers at third. Like Devers was like not great.
It's a coin flip.
He was never, like, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't even think of one because you just don't stay at third base very long if you are a complete butcher. But it was better than people give him credit for too. I will say that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my worry is that Casas ends up like, who's the guy, the Seattle guy? Justin Smoke. Didn't he have like that one incredible year until just the strikeouts? It just became too much of a problem. But I mean, he was a top prospect. He might have been the number one prospect in all of baseball. Yeah,
he was a big prospect. Yeah.
Doesn't help that he was playing in Seattle.
That's true as well.
By the end of it, he would play it everywhere. I'm looking up Casas. Like, I'm actually kind of curious now to see his similarity scores. Through 24, this is the thing, right? Like, my eyes deceive me then, because through 24, or maybe this is just a bad metric, his most similar players are Morneau, Carlos Delgado, and Matt Olson. It just doesn't feel like it's been that. So
I mean, how much were they playing?
He doesn't seem like the same type of player as Morneau at all. Again, this might just be my.
That was the weirdest one for me. Was Morneau.
Well, so like now I'm looking at it. Morneau kind of sucked. So like that's part of it too, right? Like he. The funny thing is that's through 25. Through 24. Morneau at 25 ended up hitting 34 home runs, drove in 130 runs, hit 320 and won the MVP. So that if the progression is that linear, that we'll all look like idiots. But
oh god, yeah, if he turns into Justin Morneau or Carlos Delgado,
or Matt Olson,
I love.
I would take him as Matt Olson. Like, I noticed that Chris Davis is fifth on that list, so that's for every Justin Morneau, there's a Chris Davis.
That is the one thing to offensively, like they just need to stop striking out so much. They've struck out the most in the big leagues. Their numbers, their batted ball numbers are very good. They're hitting everything hard when they hit it, but they're just not making enough contact. And I mean, Casas is in that boat too.
I will say, of all the concerns, though, defense is my biggest. Since Cora's come back in 2021, they have not had a good defensive team. Like every year, it is an issue. And this was supposed to be the like, oh, this wasn't going to be a problem. And they're just riddled with errors. And again, like Bregman will probably figure it out. And if Casas can just improve a slight bit, then yeah, that probably brings the error numbers down. But it's just like, is this a Cora problem? Like, is it a personnel issue? Like, why are they always so untrustworthy defensively?
But you look at a guy like Cassis, he's been one of the constants, and that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like maybe he's just not what the perception is, or what he's just not evolving as a player. It's also funny too that we're sitting here talking about the Red Sox and all that ails them, and it's like, yeah, I'm like they got to start making more contact. You're like, you got to start fielding the ball. We haven't even talked about the fact that Tanner Houck has like a 10 ERA, and
he is broken.
It speaks to there's the widespread inconsistencies that they have.
I mean,
pitching's an issue too. So,
yeah, I mean, you feel a lot less good about their depth at this point because you've kind of banked on Houck at least being like a number 3, like maybe a number 4, and you still haven't seen Bayo this year. You still don't know what Giolito is going to be on the other side of all this. Like,
well, I don't know. Like, what has happened with Houck? I mean, was it?
I have no idea.
Was it? I don't think like the stuff is not an illusion. I don't know if it's the whole approach. I did think there was one thing I thought was kind of eye-opening in one of those episodes of the Clubhouse where Breslow and Bailey were talking about their approach, and Breslow said something about fastballs, and he said, the most consistently barreled up or hardest hit pitch is fastball. So it doesn't make any sense logically why the fastball is the pitch you throw the most often. And I got to say, like, as someone who's never thrown a major league fastball, that was kind of a alarming thing to hear from him, because like as a major league ball player, I assume you should know like the importance of establishing your fastball. And like the reason it's hit so often is because there's so many of them thrown, and if you don't have a reliable fastball, like all those other pitches don't work as effectively. And that was one of those where I was like, are we getting a little too Ivy League here and a little not as much of guy who pitched in the big leagues for multiple years?
I think both things can be true. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? That was interesting. I guess. Again, that's one of those ones where it's like that is 0.1% of the thought process and reasoning that they're doing. So like, I'd like to think it's a little deeper than that, because if you got a guy who throws 9, then no, so if that's the case, maybe then either they aren't convicted, or they've evolved their thought process. Because what did they do this offseason? They got guys who throw gas. It's all fastballs. It's Crochet, Chapman, Bueller, whatever. But like, they made a point. They brought in that there was I forget who, one of their like advisors or whatever now, was one of those kids that came from one of the internet basically, and he wrote a whole thing about like how Aroldis Chapman's biggest weapon is the fact that he can throw a fastball that guys swing and miss at. And like, so maybe they kind of learned from that and were like, well, actually fastballs do matter, but we can't have, whatever Tanner Houck is throwing out there, because that's been the issue, is he's getting hit. Like, if you can get swing and miss with a fastball, that's elite skill, but everything else, you're in trouble.
Maybe he's tipping or something, because you're right. Like and I hate to always kind of like go to that whenever a guy's getting lit up, but to Ben's point, like the stuff isn't bad. It's just he's getting knocked around. But I mean, the concern with Houck has always been control. Like it's never been stuff. And I worry that with a guy who has such a sweeping breaking ball that he goes to, like if you're trying to get rid of his fastball, he doesn't really have a whole lot of pitches that you can set your watch to him throwing for strikes. So like beyond all the basic principles of needing to establish the fastball and a good way to put guys away, especially if you throw other junk pitches, it's like that's kind of his way into the strike zone, because that slider, part of the benefit is that it can end up 20 feet outside of the strike zone. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that if he doesn't turn it around and then one of Bayo or Giolito just isn't what we expect him to be, like that rotation depth starts looking pretty thin.
Yeah, I've always liked the idea of Houck as a closer, but like you need someone to start games in order to even get to a closer. So, if he's not the answer in the rotation, who is a better answer there. So, okay. Talked a good amount about the Red Sox. Just want to make sure that we touch a little bit on the Celtics. They are beginning their championship defense against the Orlando Magic. A devastating matchup amongst Titans in the first round of the East playoffs. Jaylen Brown's injury, I think, is maybe the most alluring, interesting piece of this. It doesn't seem like his knee is going to be all that big of a concern. Injuries are really the only worry for them, at least making the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I mean, is there anything beyond that, despite the fact that the Cavs technically finished above them in the standings, that gives you guys any pause with the playoffs beginning?
No, injuries in the Cavs.
I was
Like,
gonna
I do
say,
think the
like,
Cavs are the only team that can, like, that's pretty much it, right? Like, I do think the Cavs are the only team that could actually keep up with them. That might not be frauds.
Why?
Um,
Why?
for all the concerns about Darius Garland, he is actually proving to be a pretty competent complementary piece to Donovan Mitchell. And I think that Mitchell is the only, like, I don't know, centerpiece, top end talent player on a competitive team that could actually make a difference, like kind of over Giannis at this point. Like the Pistons are exciting, but they're not going to go anywhere. You know, the Pacers, it's like I like Halliburton, but the supporting cast isn't nearly as good. So, you know, and the Cavs have played the Celtics well too this year. So that's the other side of it. So, um, you know, I guess that's kind of the big thing. But there really is anything short of, I mean, if they don't run roughshod through the first two rounds, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess that's the only thing that's really kind of interesting for these next 4 or 5 weeks, however long it takes to play 2 series, is like, I do think there's a chance that they come out and just blow doors, and it's like they've been sitting on this, they've been saving this extra gear for 6 months or whatever it's been, and it's been the mega sleepwalk through the season. And yeah, the problem with, if that's your approach, and the problem if that's what they're going to end up looking like, is like, if you have an injury, it's, that's the thing with sports cars, right? It's like one little thing can throw it completely out of whack, and then you're parked. I think that's the thing, is if Jaylen Brown is not fully healthy, that could be an issue. But I would honestly think long and hard about how much I'm using a player like him for the next 4 to 5 weeks, because I think you can get through it. And like, I know that's why I'm in my basement talking about sports and not making those decisions, because I don't think you can allow yourself to get to that point. If the guy's healthy, you're going to play him, or if he's anything close to healthy, you're going to play him, because you can't afford to take that risk and you can't afford to have that mindset. But I do think, yeah, I think they're probably better than people are giving them credit or realize, because I do buy into that idea that I think they're okay with not being the 1 seed. I think they're okay with just kind of rolling into this thing, and then in finding their game, and just being like, oh, it's the springtime. This is where we kick the shit out of everyone. So,
did you guys happen to watch the playing game, the Hawks Magic game?
No, but I saw Trae Young kicking the basketball.
Well, that's actually
that one, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk about, like, if you don't have interest in something, don't
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was watching the Masters again, so I'm just
watching it on playback.
Yeah, me too. I was watching it on tape delay instead of Hawks Magic.
But I thought that was kind of a good illustration of why I don't really have any concern or really interest in the Eastern Conference playoffs as it relates to the Celtics, because either the teams that care enough, like the Magic, are not good enough, and the teams that are good, or the players that are good, like Trae Young, don't care enough. And yeah, I mean, Donovan Mitchell, this could be the one, it doesn't happen until it happens. But like, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, there's teams that might give them a push, but ultimately those teams are not talented enough to actually serve a real threat.
I could see like the Knicks like dragging them into a rock fight, but they swept the Knicks, so it's like,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when that LeBron Cavs team. Was that 17 or 18 where the Celtics put up a good fight against? I think that was the year they beat the Wizards in like the second round, and then they got the Cavs in the
Yeah,
third
Isaiah
round and
Thomas.
just
Yeah.
steamrolled them because everyone knew the Cavs were gonna, or got steamrolled because everyone knew the Cavs were just far and away the best team. And for those first two rounds, it felt like the Celtics might actually like be able to make a push. And then you saw them against Cleveland. I was like, oh, this team's hosed.
I'd love it if the Cavs like got back to the finals, and we could have the fodder that like was LeBron overrated? Is this the best Cavs team of all time?
Do we really litigate that?
Is
like
Donovan
6
Mitchell
years
is
later
Donovan
after
Mitchell
he leaves?
actually the greatest Cleveland Cavalier?
People are
Are
asking.
there any holdovers still on the Cavs from the last LeBron team? Like, where's Chetty Osman?
No, it's
Like,
actually funny though. I was talking to somebody and I was like, another chapter in the Celtics Cavs rivalry, and they were like, "Why? What do you mean?" And I was like, "You remember LeBron?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." Like it was so much about LeBron, not about the Cavs, that they had like literally forgotten
yeah.
that there was like a good like few years where they.
I blame that on Nike. That's a whole nother take, but that's a jersey thing. If they were still wearing the same jerseys that they were back then, that would not be as much of an issue. I guarantee it.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about the Celtics. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge their existence since they are about to probably raise another banner. There's also
you
not
don't
a
even
lot.
have to check in again for like another.
Yeah.
It's the thing. You know what I mean? Like we're good for another 2 months.
That's what I would do
Yeah,
during
we
the
need to
regular
break
season.
down them blowing the Magic stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, you check in. I would check in. Oh, it's February 10th. Let's see what they're doing. Oh, they're beating the Wizards by 40 points. Got it. All right, I'll see you in another 3 weeks. Oh, what are they doing? Oh, they're killing the Pelicans by 26. Got it. All right, I'll see you in a month.
It's. I know we're short. It's like playing a video game. You're like, this team's good. I'm just gonna simulate the season. All right, yeah, we won 60 games. I feel confident enough simulating these first 2 rounds, and then I'll play it. And when I get to the conference final, I won't leave it up to chance there. But there's no way the computer's gonna knock me out through these first 2 rounds. I think that's kind of where we're at. We're just simming. We're always just simming the Celtics right now.
All right, other end of the spectrum. The Boston Bruins. Their season is mercifully over. I realize there's only so much some parties on this call can say. For me, my jumping off point is the Charlie Jacobs letter. When I saw that posted, I started reading it, and I was just scanning, waiting to get to the part where something of substance was said, and then it reminded me of like that Robert Kraft letter of a couple years ago, where anytime you see the screenshot of a letter, you think, "Uh-oh, something big is happening," and then you get to the end, it's like, "Oh no, we're just recommitting ourselves to sports excellence here in this storied franchise and our fan base." I don't know. Where do the Bruins go from here? What do you guys make of this season? Were you even watching the last like couple weeks of the campaign?
No, on that last part. They didn't deserve to be watched. I'll preface this with a question for the group. So when you think about teams writing letters to their fan bases, what's like the first thing that comes to mind? I'm genuinely curious because I have one and I'm not sure if I'm crazy and just like isolating something.
I stick of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
The Cavs. Okay.
What's his face?
That's true. That's a good one. Yeah, gunned after the decision, right?
Yeah, the Comic Sans and everything with.
Yeah.
So my head was going to when the Rangers, the New York Rangers, had that sell off. I think in 18. I think that was the year they traded Rick Nash to the Bruins. They like traded everyone out, and it was the off season before they got Panarin, and they wrote like a really candid letter about being bad and being like, we had no choice but to blow this up. And they proceeded to have I think it was that following offseason, they had like a very strong offseason and very quickly got back into relevance. My developing take after seeing that Jacobs letter and thinking about the fact that maybe I just notice it more since that Rangers thing. Now it seems like anytime a team's bad, they're like, we have to write a letter to our fans to be like, hey, by the way, we're freaking bad. And it's like, what does anything that Charlie Jacobs like say in that letter hold to a fan base? And one of the things that I almost laughed at is they, together with our hockey operations leaders, we're actively preparing for the NHL draft and anticipate a top tier selection. You mean with a guy who famously can't draft? Like they're that should end with because of how important the draft is, we are going to change and look for new leadership or something like that. But how could anybody be that like I don't know. It's certainly not a galvanizing letter, but I don't know what he expects. Like, I thought they would have been better just not saying anything or wearing it to the media, which he did do an exclusive with the Globe. But
So I've said this a lot. Ben's familiar with this take I have. When it comes to professional sports, and this is why, as I contemplate my own career path and things like that, I'm comfortable with the way it's trending. There's just too much content, and it's all just a monkey see, monkey do thing, and I don't even mean this as a criticism of Charlie Jacobs or whoever wrote this letter. And like that's the other thing too, right? Like the owners don't write it, so it's like what are we doing here? Like it's just, and this is not a Bruins thing. It's just everybody. It's like that. Your point, Logan, is I think this is the extension of that point. Is like we just all do this. So if we all do it, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, if you don't do it, then you look like you don't care. So now we're just in this circular thing where we're just making content to make content. I think content's just a very all-encompassing term here. Yeah, like especially when you're talking about a fan base like the Bruins. Like I read the first 5 or 6 tweets to or the replies to that tweet, and they were all negative. Like this is not a fan base that's gonna receive a letter very well, and I mean that in the most endearing way possible. So yeah, I think it's just checking a box. I don't have a major take on it one way or another. So that's the other.
well, it's just like I'd rather him not send a letter than or I would rather like if he's not going to send something that says either like here's tangible things that we're doing or is like just don't give me the drivel
He's
because
not
it's
going to
like
say tangible things at the press conference.
no, exactly
No one ever does, but no one does.
no they don't so it's just like then don't say anything like don't show face like that was everyone was so upset that John Henry wouldn't show face and I thought that he should do that but at the same time I knew John Henry wasn't going to say anything. I knew he wasn't going to get up there and defend the Mookie Betts trade. So it's like stop with the window dressing. Like I'd rather them just disappear and it's like be yourself, be honest, like you don't want to be facing this.
With the letter though, it's another example of just the LinkedInization of sports, where it's like every mistake that you make, like you can't just eat it and move on and or learn from it. Like it's got to like you have to make this post on social media explaining to everyone like why you did it and like here's what I'm gonna learn, which you should learn. Like it's absolutely, but like just this performative thing of being like I've taken time to reflect and da 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 da, and it's like you don't have to justify this to all of your followers. Like just God, like I know this is the thing people do, but man, it's just like more and more this creeping thing of real life being like LinkedIn is just so deflating.
Thank you for sharing my reposting my LinkedIn post yesterday, by the way.
No, I know you're doing exciting things in your career as a digital content strategist.
All right, I am.
There's a right way to do LinkedIn.
This has been fun. But all right. So I feel we're going in circles then, right? Like it's just this isn't going to go away. It doesn't solve anything. Ultimately, decisions that are important are the ones that affect what goes on the ice or on the field or on the court or whatever. So like until those sorts of decisions are made, like it doesn't really matter. I do wonder, like, is this a media thing too? Like, is my brother having this conversation with his work friends? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know. Might not even register. I don't know.
All right.
Are we all online?
Yeah. No, that's a valid. It might be more being online than being in media.
But I also I know I don't have a problem with them not making moves. The more I think about it, in terms of decision making stuff, just because like is this the time you want to completely flip things upside down? I don't know. So just something to keep an eye on or to think about. But
yeah. Well, that's good. Talking about being too online is good segue. I do want to ask though. I mean, how hard is your guys' out here? Do you have 15 more minutes to talk about behind the
No.
keyboard?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to talk to you guys about, you want to talk about being too online, being too kind of plugged into the sports media cycle, and kind of pose the question of, in your career of covering, following, whatever word you want to use for sports, what are the stories that come to mind if I say you were thinking, well, as you were writing about it, like, is this real? Like, is this actually being covered by major news outlets that this is a real story? And two, to kind of take it from one was absolutely Aaron Hernandez for obvious reasons. Like, that was one where I remember being in the office and someone saying Aaron Hernandez, an active NFL football player, is being arrested for murder, and just that unfolding over the course of the day of how unbelievable it was. The other, from an incredulity standpoint, was Deflategate, because every single drip that came out of that over like the course of literal months, as someone who had never thought about ball deflation in my life, I was like, are we serious here? Like, are we actually like bringing in like federal prosecutors to investigate ball
Once it
deflation?
went federal,
What's that?
once it went federal, that really
Yeah.
did take it to like a cartoonish level.
Yeah, right. It was cartoonish. Right. What? Yeah. The Aaron Hernandez thing was, just, uh, you know, surreal in a certain way. But yeah, Deflategate was a cartoonish, unserious, in my opinion, few months of everyone's life.
The when you sent us the text, the first two things I thought of were Aaron Hernandez and Deflategate. So I might not have a whole ton to add here, but like I distinctly remember like the same exact thing. I remember we can get in the car, I'll drive you there, I'll show you exactly where I was standing inside the office when someone turned around and was like, I have a source who's telling me it's murder one for Aaron Hernandez. And it's just like, whoa, like that's insane. Like that's again, and it's not just he wasn't the backup left guard. He was a legitimate Pro Bowl player making millions upon millions of dollars. Was going to be a Hall of Famer if he kept his life on the tracks, and obviously he didn't. So like that was the big thing too. It's like that is the equivalent of I can't even think of somebody on like the current Patriots team because there probably isn't a good comp because they aren't that good. Like Hunter Henry, I guess. I don't know. So not that Hunter Henry's doing that, I'm sure. I don't want to besmirch his name. And then like, yeah, the Deflategate thing, I was actually looking through, I had some old files, and this is kind of like a reflection of media too, is like, I was going through old reviews, and I had a review that was, in the review was a direct comment on a live blog I did of Brady in court, one of Brady's court hearings. I think it was the Supreme Court or whatever, not Supreme Court, but like the federal court hearing. And it was like in the review it mentioned how many page views it got. I forget what it was. It was something like 45,000 or some insane number that like we'd walk through hell in a gasoline suit to get that right now. Like it was, I mean, it was just you put Deflategate or Tom Brady or Roger Goodell in a headline, and just the number would go boom. You could watch it like our real time stuff. It would just go crazy, and like people could not get enough of it. You want to talk about cartoon levels or whatever, the cartoonishness of it all.
Yeah.
Like we spent an entire day doing the court sketch thing. Like that was. It's just I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. It's so hard to fathom. And there's a lot of stuff with the Patriot. You want to talk about Robert Kraft going down to Florida before the AFC Championship game? Like that's up there too.
Yeah.
And it's just like we're playing this ridiculous game of Mad Libs with this one franchise. You read these books and it's like, oh yeah, I can't remember. Like that's not even talking about the actual football. I mean, Tom Brady almost chopped his thumb off in like AFC Championship practice, and like that's number 47 on the list of crazy things that happened during the 20-year run of the Patriots.
Aaron Hernandez has like literally caused my entire outlook on drafting and players to change, because like every time that there's a player with they say like, oh, this person has like questions, like character questions, once upon a time like, oh, he's probably late to practice, or like now I there's always like for that split second I'm like, yeah, maybe he's killing people because like there's a precedent for it. Like you can't totally because like Aaron Hernandez supposedly like he dropped or whatever, like he was available later than he might have been from a skillet, and they're like, he's got some character concerns. No, his character concerns were murder.
There's no way.
I was actually listening. I was listening to Tom Curran's podcast not that long ago, and he's talking about Stefan Diggs supposedly being a problem in the locker room. He's like, when people were a problem in the locker room, like, 30 years ago, they were like in the police blotter, like they were getting arrested. He's like, Diggs is probably temperamental, and it's like this guy's a problem in the locker room, and it's like, where's the line between a guy's kind of difficult to be around versus he's Aaron Hernandez? Like it's just such an
It's a big
all-encompassing
line.
thing
It's
now.
a large line.
So who knows?
I'm trying
But
to think of
man, the Robert
Yeah.
Kraft AFC Championship thing that has the wheels turning on some of the weird crime things. Like I remember one night, never ended up writing it, or it was certainly working at Nesson for obvious reasons. But do you guys remember? I think it was Michelle McPhee. Speaking of Aaron
Yeah.
Hernandez, who she has some very good stuff, but also has some spotty things. I remember sitting at Nesson on a Friday night, and the Red Sox had just parted with Hanley Ramirez, and there was a guy who got pulled over on the Mass Pike, and he was like trafficking drugs or something like that. And there was a report that he like either was doing Hanley Ramirez's bidding or something like that. And there was only this one report out there, but it was from someone who had actually like gotten things before. And I remember all of us sitting around being like, are we going to have to deal with like a Hanley Ramirez federal crime at some point? And then nothing else came of it because obviously we weren't going to do anything with it at that point. But it's like, yeah, those weird things that just kind of come up now, especially with the existence of social media and whatnot, things can gain traction really quickly.
Yeah, the Michelle McPhee thing reminds me of again, it just kind of speaks to because she was the one who had the Hernandez reporting too, right? On EEI.
Yeah, she did. The day he died, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, on EEI. Yeah.
And so like going back even farther, I think to like 11 or 12, the Jerry Sandusky stuff is another one you could put into that bag where it's like that was back when EEI was still simulcast on Nesson and they had somebody on who basically alluded to some sort of child trafficking ring being run by Sandusky. I don't even remember the details. And like we ran with it because it was just a completely different time. And I think it's like the most read story in like Nesson.com history, if I recall. I think Hurley wrote that one actually. And it's just like that one's up there too. Like Jerry Sandusky be like that was back again too. Like you can kind of see like the ebbs and flows of like media strategy as it pertains to various outlets where it's like back in that, 10 to 13, everybody was far more national than they are now. We've kind of circled back into local, but like national was a big thing back then. So just being like, why are we caring about what I mean, I get why we're caring about it, but from an editorial standpoint, like it is kind of wild.
Get careful.
This is on my New England sports website that this guy's getting bagged for being a monster. But
Yeah. I do have one that is not nearly on the scale of like crimes and whatnot, but just like a weird day was the day Tuukka Rask left the bubble during COVID, because that happened. If I might be saying some of this wrong, it happened like hours before I think their first playoff game.
yeah, it was a Saturday morning.
It was a Saturday morning, and I remember, I think, Mike, it was you that got tipped off, right? We got an email or something from one of the Nets and Bruins people that was basically like, hey, we just found out there's going to be some big, sensitive Bruins news coming down this morning. And like, they didn't even tell us what it was either, right? They were just like, basically stand by for that, but some shit's going to go down. And then I was like, Tuukka Rask is leaving the bubble. There were 27 different theories. I remember Dale Arnold had put one of them out there, and he might have been wrong. I forget what it was, but Dale was caught in the crosshairs because he was a Nesson employee. So people were like taking it seriously, but I think he had given bad info or something like that. And I just remember sitting there. Say that again.
I said, I hope Dale got yelled at because I know somebody else got yelled at that day.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think a lot of people got yelled at for how things went, but that was one of those things that's like So this is obviously a huge story, but because of Nesson sensitivities too, it was like we couldn't even do like railing on radio hosts or anything like that. So it was just like covering the bubble thing, and there were Zoom availabilities and whatnot, but like you couldn't, like the Tuca thing was such a third rail issue, especially for Nesson. Like I remember just being like, so first of all, we're having the playoffs in freaking August, and
Yeah.
like now this guy's just, you know, decided to back out. That was a weird one.
Yes, I remember that vividly, because I remember, yeah, it was during that COVID, right? So like we're all working remotely, and
Yeah.
at that point, like for the first, I don't know if you guys, but like it was really uncertain of like what we were supposed to do, like work wise, because I was like, what are my
Yeah.
hours? You know what I mean? Like, am I just so? I remember it was in August, and I was like, you know what? I was like, since freaking March, like I've basically been like tuned in at any moment that like something could change, something with the company could change. So I like kind of I silenced my phone, and oh no, I didn't silence my phone, but I was like, I'm just gonna go and like play with the kids outside. So I go outside, and I'm just like been out there for like 20 minutes, and my phone rings, and I pick up my phone, and it is someone who was all of our one of our bosses, and it's like, hey, is your phone on you? And or like, oh, your phone is on you, and I was like, yeah, and like, have you not been getting the texts? And I was like, and I'm like, try to play it off. I'm like, oh yeah, I got some text. So I look, and there's like 20 something text messages with like department heads all over the company about like this, and then they're like, yeah, so like as if like like, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, I don't know, it's a nice Saturday morning, like I'm like not, and so basically I got the message that like I need to go back, I need to be like here in front of my computer, and what do? Nothing. Like it's like it like the sin was not that I had not done anything, it was just that like I had not been, because like no, don't post about it, don't do anything, but like the fact that you are not aware and responding to this thing on like, that is on you, you have failed today's test. And I was like, okay, so for the rest
That
of the day I just sat in front of a computer and like answered Teams messages and text messages about how like not to address this problem, and to like feel questions
we
from you
can't write
guys
about
of like,
this.
how are we supposed to like approach this, and be like, I don't know, but whatever it is, if that person calls me again and they're like, what are you doing, I'm like, I'm sitting right here, I'm not doing another damn thing.
Yeah.
My ass has been stapled to this chair.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very much akin to the like, well, we have to write a letter. We just missed the playoffs by 20 points. It's like, why aren't you sitting in front of your computer? It's like, what? So I can refresh Twitter and see what every other outlet's doing because
Yeah.
you guys won't let me do anything?
No, I'm
Yeah,
gonna I'm gonna
Like, we
back
couldn't
read this
even write,
story
because I
about,
remember asking,
yeah,
like, can we write like analysis? Like, can we write like, what do the Bruins do now that Tuukka Rask is gone? It was like we couldn't even do that. It was like you could not even talk about like the material hockey impact. It was a ridiculous time.
I that morning, similarly, like I was playing with the dog. Our dog had just been diagnosed with cancer, and he's just limping around, and I'm just like laying on the floor with him, and like this news breaks. I'm getting the emails. I was the only one like on, so I you know, Johnny on the spot, you know, ascended to a new level of awesome, and just was like, I'll write the story. We just did we did like a quick news story, and then yeah, you want to talk about stuff in a review. I may have just like, you know, mindlessly speculated about what it could be in a tweet, and then that's a conversation we can probably delve into a little bit more in a couple months. But like, I remember taking so much shit for like innocuous stuff, and it's just like this is, yeah,
Forgot about the tweet.
it wasn't even anything, again, which is crazy. Like that's a, yeah, almost like a Malcolm. Is Tuca ever really totally addressed that? Like outside of, I think just his kid was sick or whatever, and he just wanted to go home. Like it's
Yeah,
not quite Malcolm,
family emergency.
but there is some you know mystery with that too. So,
Yeah,
and respectively,
that was a weird story, and it was just my thing too. Is like that whole postseason experience was going to be such a crapshoot that it's like
yeah,
bring your team, but throw everything out the window. So these people be like, how could he let his team down like this? It's like he could have shown up having not played in 4 months, and they could have gotten knocked around
yeah.
and sent home in a couple days. Like,
I was
yeah, was
that
that the Senators year? Was that
No, they played. Did they play Ottawa in the?
Who
Who
made
they play?
the
No,
big
it was the
run?
Lightning. They
No,
got
they
bounced by
played
the
The
Lightning.
Canadians
beat
made the
they
big
beat Carolina in the
No,
first round. They beat
they beat
Carolina,
Carolina,
and
and
then
then was that when
they got waxed by Tampa. But I brought up the Carolina thing
Tampa?
'cause
Yeah.
that was another thing. You want to get into weird stuff, like just COVID in general. You could do a whole podcast on covering sports and COVID, but like they played, they were supposed to play at like on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock or whatever. The game, it's like playing at the local rec. The game before them goes 2 overtimes or whatever it was. The NHL
Yeah.
announces like, actually, we're gonna play this game at 10:30 a.m. the next morning or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I guess we're covering the Bruins at it's like Marathon Monday, but the Bruins playing in August for the right to go to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's like, what is going on here?
It's the
At
Black
that
Friday
point in
game. Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's like playing like down to Saugus or whatever.
at
Hockey
that point in my at that point in my Nesson career, I was doing so much Bruin stuff that I did kind of plan things around the Bruin schedule. So my
Yeah.
wife and I scheduled our wedding for the end of August, and I missed a good chunk of that Bruins Lightning series because I got married and went on my honeymoon. I was like, well, I figured this would probably be a wide open time of year, but instead I missed a Bruins playoff run.
Oh.
I think it's ironic that Mask Me Mullen was the guy who had his wedding in the middle of the COVID
Yeah,
pandemic.
there were 6 people at my wedding, including me and my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is just everybody's walking on eggshells because they won't get fired either because it's in the
Yeah.
the whole thing was just a disaster. But
Yeah, what a unsettling few weeks.
yeah,
Yeah, as the person who had to write said review, Mike, I do apologize because that was one
like
of
I
those
said.
things where it's like, okay, well, I guess we
Yeah.
got to get dinged for this, even though
Yeah.
there was no semblance of what we're actually which continues to this day.
Yeah, we can litigate that a little farther down the road, but like that, yeah, I mean that's just again, that's probably a conversation for a later day, just in terms of like the general, approach that you have to have in this job specifically to this role. This, you know what I mean? Like it's interesting. People don't realize that kind of stuff. It's always fun when you have to tell them the way the various not restrictions, but just the way you do your job. It's a little different. So.
Guardrails.
That sounds a little, but
Third rails.
That's probably
I don't know. That's now I've approached my job since then as it's like basically if I were to go to New York City, people are just getting thrown into the, you know what I mean? Like I'm not even going near the yellow line. Like I'm 10 feet back. I'll miss the train before I get anywhere close to those rails. So I'm not going,
Yeah.
like no, we'll just play it safe. So even then, that doesn't always guarantee you safety either. So that's a whole.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Mike, I appreciate your time these last few weeks filling in for our jet setter. We'll definitely do it again. Logan, welcome back. I'm glad
Thank
that
you.
you're in a space that you could rejoin us. For all of you,
Makes it sound like I was in crisis, but
I always feel like you are someone in crisis.
Masking up.
yeah. Once I leave the basement, I'm gonna put 6 of them on. Yeah, my life is constant upheaval.
You're gonna get plenty of that next week when Dakota's back. So.
Oh, no kidding.
All right. For Mike, for Logan, this has been the NPC Sports Podcast. Have a lovely day, everyone.